Why would I need to dare you to be a diplomat? The number one problem in organizations today is silence. We have team members sitting in silence instead of speaking up. And there are many reasons for this. Some are afraid of criticism, some are afraid of retaliation, and some are just complacent. Nothing ever changes. We are losing great ideas and great team members to silence. Let's define diplomacy. And I'm not talking about international relationships, although conflict resolution is foreign to most of us. Diplomacy is dealing with others in a sensitive and effective way to come to agreements about mutual outcomes. Diplomacy is not like trigonometry, where you learn it once and you never use it again. We need to be practicing diplomacy in our offices daily. If all of our team members had some basic diplomatic skills, we would have a better culture in our offices. So what do we do when conflict resolution is needed in our office? Often the if onlys come up. If only she would do this, if only he would do that. We have all heard a version of this. But who can we actually control? The only people we can control are ourselves. So let's start with the people that we can actually change, us. We need to own our part in the conflict. As uncomfortable as conflict is, conflict helps us grow. Every disagreement is an opportunity to learn about ourselves, about how we're perceived by others, and how we respond to others. All of this knowledge makes us better communicators, better diplomats. So when we come into a conflict, I want you to ask yourself 4 key questions. What is your responsibility in the conflict? Did you say something that may have been taken out of context? What about tone? My family always gets me on tone. Tone can change an entire conversation. So own your part in the conflict. There are 2 sides to every story. The second question is, are you contributing to the discourse? Did you go and talk about that person behind their back? What about body language? Do you cross your arms, roll your eyes, or go silent? The third question is, what is the bias that you bring? This question is very important. A lot of times I hear, millennials are so lazy. But are they? And what about baby boomers? They don't get technology. Can't even work their cell phones. My mother had a cell phone before I did. So identify your bias that you're bringing to the conflict. And the fourth and final question is, what is the best outcome for all? Because we are focused on winning, we aren't focused on achieving what we really want. So we need to definitely focus on achieving what we need. I belong to many dental Facebook groups, as I'm sure many of you do. And the other day I was scrolling through and I came across a question. How do you deal with team members in conflict? I was so excited, I couldn't wait to be inspired by the diplomatic solutions that I was going to see in the comments. But to my dismay, 3 out of the 5 comments said, fire them. I couldn't believe it. But isn't it easier to ignore conflict, dismiss it, rather than deal with it? We all know that replacing an employee is costly. It costs about $4,000 to replace someone. And it takes an average of 42 days to find a replacement. Imagine all the patient care lost in those 42 days. I believe by using these 4 key questions with the people that are in conflict, we can reduce turnover and lost patient care. No one likes conflict. I don't like conflict. I'm sure you don't. And I think we look to our doctors to offer diplomatic solutions when there is conflict. But I've worked with many a doctor that when conflict arises is in their office with the door closed on a very important phone call. And who can blame him? Conflict is hard, but conflicts happen. And a very small disagreement can grow into a toxic work environment. We all know this. A small cavity, if left untreated, just gets larger and larger and larger until it's a full-blown abscess. The same is true with conflict. We just kick the can down the road to a much bigger problem. So let's go over an example that happened in an office that I worked at. We had a relatively new employee, and she wasn't helping with suction or general cleanup at the end of the night. Stacy never helps. Let's go over the 4 key questions. What is your responsibility in this conflict? Does Stacy know she's supposed to help? I'm always amazed that people think I can read their minds. If you need help, please ask for it. It's not personal. I may not know that you need help. The second question is, what did you contribute to the discourse? Did you go and talk about Stacy behind her back to everybody in the office besides Stacy? The third, what is the bias that you bring? Stacy's a millennial. Of course, she's lazy. And fourth, what is the best outcome for all? That Stacy contributes and helps at the end of the night. I know this is a silly example, but these little things can grow to such much bigger problems. So let's remember the 4 key things. The first question is, what is your responsibility in the conflict? The second I want you to ask yourself is, did I contribute to the discourse? The third, what bias do I bring for all? If we learn these 4 questions when conflict arises and use those on ourselves, not only would we make our office better, but also our lives. Today, I dare to be a diplomat.